done, and that residual trade barriers are unquestionably a contributing factor to the ongoing trade imbalance. So against that high-level backdrop, allow me to comment briefly on three specific directions in which we in the field hope to work more closely with the larger community represented here. First, getting around and beyond barriers, of course, isn't only about government. It can also be about technology. And a key example of that, which many of you present here, many Canadian firms are already out front of, is skillfully exploiting opportunities in e-commerce. We're delighted, for example, that CCBC has organized a panel later today on e-commerce. Earlier this summer, I had the privilege of hosting Minister Freeland here in Shanghai for the G20 Trade Ministerial, and she took time to address an audience here and launch a new guide for Canadians in e-commerce that the China Network has put together. We have new material on YouTube. We're stepping up our efforts to help push out information and guide particularly Canadian small and medium enterprises as they consider whether e-commerce is an opportunity for them in China. And as part of the retail and consumer market that Mr. Charvet mentioned earlier, it's a growing opportunity. China's online retail is now the biggest in the world at Canadian dollars, about $820 billion. It's about 80% bigger than the online retail market in the USA, for example. Le commerce électronique n'est pas une panacée pour les problèmes d'accès, mais il abaisse les barrières et les frais généraux dans certaines catégories de produits où le Canada excelle. Et dans d'autres secteurs où la distribution traditionnelle de produits canadiens est déjà mature, le commerce électronique offre de nouveaux vecteurs puissants permettant de surmonter les barrières géographiques, à savoir qu'il rend nos produits disponibles aux consommateurs profondément à l'intérieur de la Chine, plutôt que d'en limiter l'accès seulement aux clients des magasins traditionnels situés de l'autre côté. So now when our team supports Canadian exporters to China, for example, in the agriculture and agri-food sector, coming to traditional marketing events, brick-and-mortar marketing events like Food Show China in Shanghai, we now ensure that they take the time and we help organize opportunities for them to meet with e-commerce partners like eHaoyan as we did last year, and we're going to continue to do that together with the CCBC and other partners. And on Saturday, as you probably know, the Prime Minister will be taking time when he's in Hangzhou with some members present here to reinforce this relationship with Alibaba in their headquarters. The second point I want to make is, as Mr. Charvet mentioned just now, the consumer market in China, and the fact that the consumer market and the opportunities for Canada are obviously not just in coastal China. When we talk about barriers to our access to this market as it continues to mature and grow, and it's in some senses slow, part of it is getting beyond the barrier of coastal China, the mental barrier, the geographic barrier, and moving into the interior, into second and third tier markets that are continuing to grow rapidly. E-commerce is one way of doing that, as I mentioned just now, but it's a bigger issue than e-commerce. We need to work harder at thinking through how we can effectively open doors into this massive consumer market beyond cities like Shanghai, beyond these sort of aeroplan itinerary, if you would. And we know from data that while disposable income in coastal cities obviously exceeds that of inland China, the proportion of disposable income spent on foreign products is actually higher, even as those disposable incomes are continuing to rapidly rise in inland China. This is true also with respect to services, of course, and there's plenty of data with respect to indicators in second and third tier city markets, and I assume most of you have seen a lot of those. I won't burden you with more of that data, but I personally think what's useful for Canadians is to look at the geography of two proximate indicators, if you would. I like to look at the geography of where pioneers in the services sector like Manulife have decided to move into the inland market. If you look at the number of cities in China, second and third tier cities, where Manulife is selling insurance policy, that tells you where quality, Canadian, financial services, trusted product and service has a ready market and a growing market. With them, another proximate indicator that I think is useful for us all to consider, the geography of it in China, is where the pioneers in our offshore school business have located schools and have succeeded. If you look at two of the largest or earliest pioneers in the sector that many of you will know, Simon Concord Canada, the Maple Leaf Schools, look at the cities they're in, look at the markets they've found and tapped into, and that tells us, I think, a lot about where there's much more room to grow for Canadian retail, Canadian goods and services beyond coastal China. Those are areas where we should all be busy. Those are areas where the Trade Commissioner Service is increasingly busy, where we have trade offices. We want to work more closely with whole of Canada partners, chambers, CCBC, provinces, in pushing into those markets. It's also where we anticipate opening new visa application centers, and that will be one of the results coming from this visit, which will open up access and branding and services for particularly tourists, but also for Chinese business people who want to come to Canada, make it a lot more convenient. That's where we're pushing out. It's also where we're seeing the tourism market, particularly the aerospace sector, expanding their services with new routes this summer from Xiamen to Canada. New routes announced from Hangzhou connecting Qingdao. This is where we want to be pushing our own branding and our own services in many sectors. And again, as I mentioned, this goes hand in glove with e-commerce in terms of reaching beyond the traditional geography and limits of our market penetration, our branding penetration, and leveraging new tools, technology, and opportunities to expand our access in sectors where we already have access, vertically, even as we work hard to move horizontally and open up more sectors for Canadian exporters. So I'm also pleased to highlight in this regard our collaboration for a second year today with CCBC in having a Meet the TCS session. I won't be there myself, but many of my senior colleagues from across the network will be there. And as we did last year, I think part of what we want to emphasize is making our services accessible to you and reminding those in this room who don't have opportunities regularly to work with us and help bring those services to you, not just in coastal China, but in our whole network where we have 10 trade offices around the country. So I welcome all of you to that session later today. Thirdly and finally, we need to continue to improve our services and tools to support market entry for small and medium-sized enterprises. And we want to work very closely with the CCBC and its members, both large and small, to do so. And I think after the last 4 or 5 years working here, what I find very encouraging is that for our Chinese partners, our Chinese guests, we're starting, I think, to see a shift, a very meaningful and helpful shift for Canada in our dialogue with local business leaders, with local jurisdictions, where 4 or 5 years ago, the prospect of us trying to bring a Canadian small or medium-sized enterprise across the table from a senior decision maker was never easy. It's still not easy. But as China moves toward a more innovative, innovation-based economy, one based on a more subtle and less state-planned approach to its economy, Chinese policymakers and business leaders themselves are constantly engaged in conversation about how to support SMEs, how to support innovation, how to support great things coming in small packages. And I think it's a great policy period, great policy space for us to be moving into and supporting our SMEs. Earlier this year, the government, as you may know, relaunched Can Export. Can Export is a program which has now quickly become oversubscribed, providing support to small and medium-sized enterprises moving into new markets and kicking the tires, if you would, helping defray a little bit of the overhead of doing so. The government also announced plans to relaunch programs in support of cultural and creative industry exports. To me, the two are related. I think in jurisdictions like Shanghai, leaders are now fixated on stimulating the innovation economy, but that also includes stimulating creative industries and making this city a base for leading in Asia, leading in China as China begins to spend a lot more of its innovation capital on addressing consumers in entertainment, in gaming, in the film sector, and in other areas. And again, much of what drives this innovation is coming along in small packages. So this whole space where we're finally having conversations, being able to bring Canadian innovative small companies to a jurisdiction that gets that's where the next opportunities come from, is extremely healthy. And we look forward to pushing that further in the years to come. And I would just say that as this is evolving, and as China itself is shifting resources towards incubators and other programs designed to facilitate commercialization of good ideas coming in small packages, the IP environment, although still unlike that of Canada, it's still a concern to many exporters, is also receiving more steady and judicial support from the Chinese government, which we welcome. It's still a concern, but we're seeing new approaches, a new focus on this, and often local partners who are able to help Canadian companies to this market understand how they can address their IP needs in this complex, rapidly evolving market. Le contexte évolue et nous sommes enthousiastes à l'idée de travailler avec tous, aussi bien avec les grandes sociétés qu'avec les petites et moyennes entreprises, pour maximiser les avantages du Canada. Là aussi, je salue le CCBC pour son travail d'appui aux PME, y compris au cours de cette conférence, de même qu'avec d'autres incubateurs ici à Shanghai. So in conclusion, while I see much policy work landing, but also much policy work ahead for the government, on which government must and is showing leadership, we also look to work together to harness technology, to harness partnerships in second and third tier cities, and to harness new attitudes and new policy space in China itself, and new priorities to enhance Canada's position in this market and strengthen our bilateral trade and investment relationship. Thank you very much, and have a great conference.
我们继续之前，我先解释一些事情关于今天的行程。第一，应该是你们都找到了你们那个通传耳机，如果还没有的话，因为每一个 panel 都会有不一样的语言。我们1号线是中文，2号线是英文，3号线是法文。In case you haven't found your headphones yet, we will have translation in 3 languages today. Channel 1 is Chinese, Channel 2 is English, and Channel 3 is French. Also, once we finish the first panel in this ballroom, we will then split into 2 different sessions that will run in parallel. In this room, we'll continue a session on conservation and CSR, followed by investment in Canada, and then in the afternoon, that track will continue with another investment session. In the Magnolia Ballroom on the 3rd floor, we will have programs targeted more at SMEs. Succeeding as an SME in China, followed by e-commerce, and then in the afternoon as well, the TCS session that Weldon mentioned. And there are many SMEs in the room. I'd like to particularly recognize the delegation brought by Quebec's representative Jean-François Lepine of entrepreneurs from Quebec. We're very happy to have so many SMEs among us, and the bulk of our membership, at least 75% of our membership, is small and medium-sized enterprises. So these sessions will be very valuable. 所以今天我们第一个 panel 结束之后，我们会有2个场地。第一个是在这一层楼5层，会是关于社会责任，然后投资加拿大。然后有另外一个在3层是主要说关于加拿大企业怎么在中国营业，那个会在3层。后来午餐大家都会来5楼，然后下午的这些场地都在3层。Finally, lunch will be up here on the 5th floor, and then the afternoon sessions will be on the 3rd floor. So now I'd like to move on to our first panel, Lessons from the C-Suite. So each year we bring a different group of C-Suite executives, presidents, CEOs, and chairmen, to share their experience and their insights as business leaders. To moderate our panel, we have an old friend of the CCBC, a Canadian who has lived in Shanghai for many years, Murray King. And although he now works for an American company, Disney, he still has a special place in his heart for Canada and we're pleased that he's taken on the moderation of our panel today. So Murray, would you and the panel please come up to the stage?
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure as a long-term resident of Shanghai and as a Canadian, a proud Canadian, former trade commissioner, to be here to talk to you about how to do business in China and to really try and learn from three truly successful global entrepreneurs, two proud representatives of Canada's business community, and one very successful entrepreneur from right here in China. I hope to try and keep the discussion as informal as possible. I know we're on the stage and the words lesson and C-suite sound very formal, but try to think of this as a living room and a conversation among friends, and I hope that you can all participate in that. And to do so, we have some representatives from CCBC who are around the room, and you can flag them down and you can write down a question. I'd be happy to go through them and try to select some to bring to our panel. Many of you have embarked on a China journey as Canadian entrepreneurs and business people, and you may be in the early stages of that, or the later stages and be more successful. And some of you may be embarking on a Canadian journey as Chinese entrepreneurs and business people. One thing I think we all have in common is that you experience different cultures, different legal systems, different investment environments, and patience and learning and listening are keys to success. Each of the three panelists today embarked on their own journeys, two starting in Canada and one starting in China, as small businesses themselves and have become truly global businesses. I'm very pleased to have these panelists join us today, and I'd like to introduce them in turn, starting with Danielle Lamar, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Cirque du Soleil, the world's largest theatrical producer, great partner for Disney. Daniel is in charge of strategies at both the business development and operations levels for the company. He also sees to the organization's financial sustainability and the perpetuation of its culture and values. So please join me in welcoming Daniel. Our second panelist is Mr. Chen Guo, or Derek Chen. He is the president of Global Fisheries Group, Incorporated, a native of a proud fishing region in neighboring Zhejiang Province, Zhoushan. His extensive experience in the fisheries industry has spanned over 27 years, and I would say has also spanned the globe. I understand that Mr. Chen spends probably a cumulative total of weeks